Okay, hello everyone. I hope everyone's having a good afternoon. We're going to get started with our webinar. If everyone could just reply in the questions, let me know that you can hear me and see my slide. I have a single slide open that says free webinar. Lightspeed and SMA, a source of social media sentiment data. All right. Haven't gotten any responses yet. Is anyone there? Hope you can hear me, see my slide. There we go. All right, I appreciate that, Glenn. We'll move on to slide 2. I just have a few slides, then I'm going to introduce Joe from SMA. So we have to read the disclaimer before we get started. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Nothing presented today should be construed as investment advice or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security or contract. Since we don't know everyone's investment objectives or risk tolerance, we are not endorsing any specific trading strategies. Security, derivative, and futures trading involves a substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Each investor must consider whether this is a suitable investment, since you may lose all or more than your initial investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Lightspeed is a division of Lime Brokerage LLC. Lime Brokerage LLC is not affiliated with these third-party market commentators, educators, or service providers. Data, information, and material are provided for informational and educational purposes only. This content neither is nor should be construed as an offer, solicitation, or recommendation to buy or sell any securities or contracts. Any investment decisions made by the user through the use of such content is solely based on the user's independent analysis, taking into consideration your financial circumstances, investment objectives, and risk tolerance. Lime Brokerage LLC does not endorse, offer, nor recommend any of the services or commentary provided by any of the market commentators, educators, or service providers, and any information used to execute any trading strategies are solely based on the independent analysis of the user. All right, now that we have that done, my name is Joe Ely. On this next slide, I have my email address posted, jely@limebrokerage.com. If you have questions or need more information on Lightspeed or would like a demo of our trading software or want to open an account, please contact me. I'll just leave that up for a second here if anyone wants to write it down quickly, jely@limebrokerage.com. So for those of you that attend and stay throughout the end of our presentation, you'll be entered in a raffle to win a Lime duffel bag. I actually have one of these duffel bags, and it's a great bag to have. So stay to the end, and one of you will be a lucky winner, and we'll mail it out to you. So, social market analytics. Joe Gitz, he's a CFA. Joe is a pioneer in the emergence and growth of quantitative trading systems. Prior to launching Social Market Analytics, he co-founded Quantitative Analytics, Inc., QA Direct, a market-leading provider of integrated database solutions for quantitative researchers and traders. And with that, I'm going to turn over the microphone and the screen sharing to Joe. It's going to take, I don't know, 30 seconds or a minute or so, but we'll get that going. I have to bring down my slide and whatnot, and Joe will be right with you.
All right, Joe, I'm on. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to make you an organizer and presenter, and then you should be able to start sharing your screen. That'll just take a few seconds here.
All right. Okay. I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen now. Joe Ely, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I can see the screen and hear you. Everything looks good.
All right. Well, first of all, Joe, thank you for having me. I'd like to thank Lime Lightspeed for having me on this webinar today and having our data on your platform. And I'd like to thank the attendees for joining us as well. I am going to be covering a new feature of the Lightspeed front end as well as the web page, And we're going to be walking through a number of different things today. So I'm going to hit the agenda. We're basically going to start by discussing the use of alternative data in finance, and the use of alternative data in general is growing, but specifically for trading, breaking news, information, alternative data is where the new action is happening. We're going to talk about how we harness this unstructured data, specifically the Twitter fire hose, to create actionable intelligence for the Lightspeed traders, and how we put that on your platform. So we're talking about what social media can offer every investor, and then how to use the widgets that we've worked together to build and put on your platform. At any point in time, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them. And there will be a section for questions at the end. So as I'm sure all of you know, there are over 850 million tweets a day generated worldwide on millions of different topics. And this slide is interesting because it's the heat map of where tweets are originating from globally on a daily basis. And the interesting part of this slide is that tweets are heavily concentrated as coming from areas of financial centers. So tweets coming from financial centers about securities, products, breaking news, oil, energy, any topic that you want to talk about, these tweets are breaking from these centers where it's relevant. And so what that means is that information is breaking. Social media, and specifically Twitter, is disrupting the capital markets, and I'm sure all of you see it on a regular basis, whether it's the president tweeting about a particular company, topic, or commodity, or whether it's a company releasing information. News breaks on Twitter, and it's disrupting the capital markets. Okay, and Twitter impacts price performance at a statistically significant level across all securities, all sectors, and all industries. And this information inefficiency, it creates trading opportunities. So the challenge is, how do we take that trading opportunity and turn it into a signal? So I'm talking specifically about Twitter, but we're also going to cover the use of alternative data in finance, specifically alternative data analysts. And you can see from this particular chart that the number of alternative data analysts is growing exponentially. Now this particular chart's up to 17, and it's only grown significantly since then. So you can see that the people that are looking to analyze alternative data is growing exponentially, and the number of funds that are employing alternative data analysts is growing exponentially as well. Now, social market analytics started in early 2012, and I would say that a lot of our time as a company was educating people on the use of alternative data, and specifically Twitter, in their investment process. And as that data has been accepted as being a predictive piece of information, that conversation has shifted much more from, hey, is alternative data useful in finance, and more towards how can I use it in finance? Because if you're looking at a technical indicator as an example, you get a value for pretty much every security every day. Or if you're looking at fundamentals, you're going to get quarterly data, annual data on a regular basis. Unstructured data, and specifically alt data, it's a much more interesting problem because you don't necessarily get information on every security every day. So in our framework, we're going to talk about how we manipulate that. So what do we do as a company? So we harness the predictive information on Twitter, the breaking news on Twitter, and we deliver real-time signals to the Lightspeed platform. So we deliver it to hedge funds, asset managers, market makers, as well as risk managers. And how do we do that? So as I mentioned, social market analytics was started in early 2012, and we built a framework that allows us to listen to the Twitter fire hose actually, I'll just walk you through the framework. So there are about 5 licensed partners of Twitter that have access to the full Twitter fire hose. We're one of those partners. So the extractor on this page listens to the full Twitter fire hose and pulls out information about topics that we're interested in. And a topic you can think of as a security. It's a set of rules that allows us to read that particular tweet and determine that that tweet is about a security that we're interested in. As an example, let's say I want to pull information on Tesla. So Tesla will have $sign Tesla, it'll have Tesla Motors, it would have Elon Musk. It would have a not for Nikolai Tesla, so we can exclude information just as easily as we can include information. It would have Solar City. It would have all the inputs into a Tesla conversation. So the extractor is a source agnostic retrieval platform that pulls information from the Twitter firehose and stores it. And because of our rule-based system, we get a very rich conversation on every security that we're tracking. The evaluator does a couple different things. One thing that we learned very early on is it's not just what's being said, but who's saying it. So one of the pieces of intellectual property that we have, and we are exposing this uniquely on Lightspeed, is we rank everybody that's ever tweeted about a security, and we score them. We score them on a number of different metrics. So we look at things like accuracy when they're talking about a particular security, how often they're responded to, how often they tweet, how often people retweet. We don't use number of followers in any way, but we use 12 different metrics. We score every account, and when an account has acquired enough credibility score, they're included in our metrics going forward. And so the evaluator looks at the account. And then we've written our own proprietary natural language processing algorithms that allow us to read a tweet and get the parts of speech. So we read the tweet up to 8 individual times, and we break it down from broader phrases down to individual words. And that multi-pass approach allows us to get a clearer context of what that particular tweet is about. One of the unique things that we do is we break our natural language processing down to asset classes. A conversation on crude oil could be bullish, for example, if an ExxonMobil refinery has a fire, and bearish for the underlying equity, ExxonMobil. So uniquely, we break down our natural language processing to the asset class, again, to get a better representation of the sentiment on an individual topic or security level. So the evaluator looks at the account, and then it looks at the actual tweets itself. It reads it up to 8 individual time, and each tweet is scored from -1 to 1 out to 4 decimal places. So we have a very fine-grained scoring system that we use. And then the calculator calculates metrics based on the conversation. So we're trying to identify when the conversation gets significantly more positive than normal or significantly more negative than normal. Obviously, most securities have a normal level of conversation on a daily basis, but what we found is that the predictive nature of the data is most effective when that conversation might get 2 standard deviations more positive or 2 standard deviations more negative than normal. So the metrics that we're publishing, and I'm going to take us all back to our stats class, are a description of the conversation on a standard normal curve. So we're basically calculating Z-scores. So if you look at this chart, most conversations are going to be at the neutral level on a daily basis. That means the current conversation, whether it's General Motors or Tesla or Microsoft or Google, is a normal level. And this is on an individual security basis. All of our metrics are calculated on a security basis. When the conversation gets more positive than normal, so maybe 1 standard deviation more positive than normal or 2 standard deviations more positive than normal, that means the current conversation is a lot more positive and that security tends to move higher. Okay, so what we're doing is to calculate these metrics, we're looking at a 24-hour summation of the conversation from those approved accounts, and we're comparing it to a 20-day baseline. So is the current conversation more positive than it was over the last 20 days? Is it more negative than it was over the last 20 days? And those are the metrics that we're creating that are exposed on the Lightspeed front end. So this data is published every minute, and we've worked very closely with the Lime Lightspeed team over the last year to create widgets that we think are going to help you guys trade better. Okay, so before we get into those front ends, how in general have we been able to, how in general can we help you improve your performance? Well, social media is a leading indicator of security performance, and you guys know this probably better than anyone as you watch news feeds and Twitter feeds. As information breaks on Twitter, and even if it's a news story, you're oftentimes going to see original story broke on Twitter. It's an indicator of price movement. So statistically, these securities tend to move higher when they have a more positive conversation than normal, or they tend to move lower when they have a conversation that's more negative than normal. That conversation might be about earnings, it might be about product attributes, it could be about the results of a drug trial. These conversations are broad and cover many different topics simultaneously. That's what makes this signal so unique. New trading ideas. So when you have a conversation happening on Twitter, oftentimes it's about securities that maybe you didn't plan on coming in and trading that day. So it gives you new ideas to trade and new ideas of securities that are definitely going to be moving. Position monitoring. So if you have a position on, you can watch the sentiment. If the sentiment changes rapidly, there may be a positive or negative information breaking on that particular security. And then obviously for trade execution, if you're looking to enter into a long position and the sentiment is negative, perhaps you can wait a little bit longer before you put in your order and get a better fill. All right. So now we're getting to the fun part. So this is how we implemented this information into the Lightspeed Trader. We're pretty excited about it. So we have 5 different reports or 5 different widgets that are on the Lightspeed Trader as well as the application. The first one's going to be top 10 sentiment, and we're gonna show you that live in a minute. So this is showing on a real-time basis the top 10 U.S. equities with the highest sentiment scores. So right now, at any point in time, these are the 10 securities that people are talking most positively about on Twitter. And we'll show you this in a second. Then we have the bottom 10 sentiment securities. So these are the 10 securities that people are talking most negatively about on Twitter compared to their normal baselines. Accurate accounts long. So we talked a little bit earlier about the metrics that we use to certified accounts and verify accounts. One of the metrics that we use is accuracy. So we created some widgets with the Lightspeed team that tells the users, hey, given that these are the most accurate accounts, here are the securities that they're most positive about, and here are the securities that they're most negative about. The accurate account short side, it's the opposite. So these are the securities that people, the most accurate accounts, are currently most negative on. And then a search tool, so sentiment by symbol. So you can enter any security. Right now it's US equities. ETFs are going to be rolling out shortly, and you can look at a sentiment dashboard on those securities. So the first screen that we're looking at is the top 10 sentiment widgets. So this is a page, and we'll show you this live in a second. So again, it shows the 10 most positively talked about securities on Twitter based on our ZScore. So on this particular page, at this point in time, Diffusion Pharmaceuticals was the highest sentiment ZScore security in our universe at that point in time. So what that means, so as I slide over, the current conversation for Diffusion Pharmaceuticals was 4.22 standard deviations more positive than normal. That's well over the 99th percentile in terms of conversation. That means the current conversation is more positive than 99+% of conversations over that 20-day period. S volume means that there are 23 tweets coming from those certified accounts that are talking about that particular security either positively or negatively at that point in time. And then SV score is volume on that standard normal curve. Now the little I on your screen, it gives you some more information, and we'll pop that up live. That means the volume for that particular security is 3.75 standard deviations higher than normal. So you have a very positive conversation, 4.22, with a high relative volume for that particular security. That's what that's saying. So there's a very positive conversation that's more frequent than normal. Beyond Meat is also on this particular screen at number 6. 4 standard deviations more positive, 156 tweets from those certified accounts with a relatively high volume. Okay, so when you click on the security, it'll take you to the sentiment by symbol page as well. This refreshes every minute. Okay, so, and you'll see as you get comfortable with these pages that these securities change throughout the day. This is not a static list. As information breaks on a particular security, whether it's beyond me getting a new deal or maybe a drug stock being approved or rejected, this list changes. And people find that a great way to find new trading opportunities. All right, so I'm going to go to the next page here. Bottom 10 sentiment widget. So the bottom 10 sentiment widget shows the stocks that are currently having the most negative conversation relative to their historical baseline. So on this particular page, let's look at Oracle. So at this point in time, the Oracle conversation is nearly 4 standard deviations more negative than normal. That means people are really talking negatively about Oracle right now, whether it's product, earnings, raising or lowering of price targets. The conversation, as I mentioned, can be any number of different things. The volume, 14, and the current conversation has 2.5 almost standard deviations more than normal. So it's a very negative conversation with a volume that is significantly higher than normal. And again, if you click on that particular ticker symbol, it'll take you to sentiment by signal. Now, I think this is my favorite implementation. So this is an accurate account long widget. And this is looking at a daily basis. We calculate who the most accurate accounts on Twitter are over the last year. So we take a summation of the sentiment at an individual security level on a daily basis for every account. And we look over the last 100 days and we identify who the most accurate accounts were, the 100 most accurate accounts over the last year. And we do that for a number of periods of time. So on this particular page, it's a 1-day period. But the 1-day accuracy might be different from the 2-day accuracy universe, might be different from the 1-week accuracy universe, which again might be different from the 1-month accuracy universe. So you select the time period, and then it shows you of those 100 accurate accounts, in this particular case, microchip technology, there are 5 of those accurate accounts talking about microchip technology. 80% of them are positive, 4 out of 5 of them are talking positively, and then the other one is neutral. Okay, so account positive, what percentage of those 100 accounts that are talking about that security are currently having positive sentiment on that particular security? So Salesforce, 73% of those 15 accounts talking about that security are currently talking positively about Salesforce, 13 negative, and then the difference is neutral. Okay, and again, this is updated on a minute-by-minute basis, and the accurate accounts are updated daily. So this is a really fresh view of the overall conversation of the people that have proved historically accurate what they're talking about. Oh, all right. The accurate account short side, this is the opposite of the long. Oh, let me go back 1 page. I'm sorry, guys. It figures it, and Twitter is on our list as we're talking about Twitter. So this identifies the stocks that the accurate accounts are currently most bearish on. So again, these 100 accurate accounts from whatever time frame you happen to select. Of the most accurate accounts, there are 11 talking about, in this case, Twitter. 36% of them are positive and 45% of them are negative, and then the rest are neutral. Okay, and on Twitter, there is a little bit positive skew to the data. So the short side is very interesting. When you get enough of a consensus that these securities show up on the short side, there's usually a pretty good reason why they're showing up on the particular list. And then if I had a situation where I just wanted to look at a particular security and the sentiment for that security, sentiment by symbol will pull up that information for me. And you can reach sentiment by symbol by clicking on the ticker symbols in any of the previous reports. And then you can also go to this page and then type in the symbol. Again, it's US equities right now. Shortly, it'll have equities or ETFs. And this page is broken down into 3 sections. So here you have our sentiment scores, and you have an English translation of that. So ZScores, that's what we were talking about, a statistical Z-score. And so for Apple, the current conversation is negative, not significantly negative. The volume is lighter than normal. So 0.38 means that the volume is slightly larger than normal, but not significantly. 284 tweets during that period, And then dispersion. Dispersion is a great metric. Dispersion shows me what percentage of the tweets are coming from unique accounts. A perfect 1 means that every tweet is from a unique account. Something that's approaching 0 would tell me that really it's one person probably dominating the conversation. So here, this is a 54, meaning that half of the tweets are coming from unique accounts. So of that 284, there are probably about 142 accounts talking about that particular security. And then we have the speedometer that tells you where that sentiment is within the individual range. So for this, sentiment is negative and about halfway to extremely negative. The negative 0.79 on this page means that the sentiment the S-score has dropped 0.79% over the last 15 minutes. So that's a 15-minute change. And then the social sentiment trend is a chart of sentiment and Twitter volume. Okay, and you have different time periods. So you have 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, as well as a year, and you just click on those and show the individual charts. Green would indicate positive sentiment. Red would indicate negative sentiment, and it goes from extreme positive to extreme negative. The bars are Twitter volume, and the color of the bar represents change in sentiment. So you can have, so here, these 2 red bars indicate that sentiment was dropping for that particular security. Okay. So up until this point, I've been showing you widgets on the Lightspeed web page, and I'll show you those live in a second. The desktop application implementation is very similar. So here we have the historical chart. So in this case, we're looking at Beyond Meat, and you can see sentiment is extremely positive, and then you have individual volume for that particular time period. Down below it, you have the top 10, bottom 10. I'm sorry, reverse. Bottom 10, top 10. So you have the securities, the S-score, as well as SV score. So this is negative sentiment. General Motors has negative sentiment, 3.69, and high relative volume. And you're going to see that if you have a significantly positive or negative sentiment, you're going to see generally a higher level of volume. Here's your negative sentiment. Here's your positive sentiment, ALDR, very high sentiment, 4.2 standard deviations, as well as a very high relative volume, 4.16. Here's your Beyond Meat sentiment. And then you have your accurate accounts positive. Overstock, 100% of the accurate accounts at the date when this particular screenshot was grabbed were positive on overstock. In this case, there was some significantly negative on Disney, and then you have the individual securities, and then you have the price chart in here as well. And obviously these widgets are customizable on your particular page, and it's grabbing the same data, just presenting it a little bit differently. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the Lightspeed Trader, and whoop. All right. So I'm going to log in. Okay. So once you log into Lightspeed Trader, you go to Research, and then you see SMA Analytics, so Social Market Analytics, and then you'll see the widgets that we just spoke about on there. So Rebonds Holdings. Now, I pointed this out before, but on the actual page, if you click on the eye, you're going to see a help screen for all the individual features. So as we mentioned, the S-score is a normalized representation of the conversation over your look back period. Your volume is your number of indicative tweets, so tweets from those certified accounts, and then your SV score is a relative volume metric. Now if you click on a particular security, it takes you to the page. So if I go 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and you can specify the individual the individual time periods and look at the sentiment and then the changes in sentiment. All right. And then you have volume in there as well. So this sentiment actually just changed. It just went from a slightly negative to a more positive value. Okay. Then you have your, so as of right now, Broadcom, of those 100 most accurate accounts, 80% of them are currently positive on Broadcom. McDonald's, Biogen, and then Delta Airlines. Now, I haven't been looking at the chat. Joe Ely, have there been any questions that have popped up on the chat?
No, there haven't been any questions so far.
Okay. Now, so I've walked you through the front end. Joe, does it make sense to go to the application?
Yeah, I can log into the Lightspeed Trader platform and show everyone the live view of the system if you'd like. Sure.
Okay, because I think I hit these apps, pretty well, and we can walk through some of these. But
yeah, I mean, if you want to go through some detail here or on the platform, I mean, it's up to you.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't I just hit a few of these? Why don't I just hit a few more of these, and then we can, if we don't have any questions, then we can call it a webinar.
Okay. Yeah, a couple questions did pop up. Did you see those? Someone asks, can you plot sentiment on return services for the time frames listed in the chart?
So we are not linked into a pricing series, but it would be a good addition to the implementation to put prices and return series on top over there. So we can't do it right now, but that's a great idea. We'll enter it into the queue.
And then another question, would you trust the S score or the SV score?
Great question. I would trust a combination of both. So if you have a high sentiment score but a lower volume, that's not as strong of a signal. So I would trust them both. So you have an S score that says the current conversation is really positive. But if you have a low relative volume, someone probably said something on Twitter that was very positive, but it hasn't gotten any traction, or there isn't any community. What we're trying to capture is the change in the overall Twitter sphere. So if you have a high sentiment score, but you don't have a high volume value, so in this case, you do have a high sentiment with a high volume, or if you have a 0 or maybe a slightly negative, I wouldn't trust that signal as much. I'd use a combination of them both. Any other questions, Joe?
That's it so far. Well,
okay.
Someone asks, is the webinar available for replay? Yes, we do record the webinars, and typically they get posted to our website, a couple days, 2-3 days after the event, so it will be available on our website. And Charles says, this is great information. Thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome, Charles. And also, if you guys have any other questions, you can send, and if you have any questions on the data, you can send a question to support@socialmarketanalytics.com. socialmarketanalytics.com, and we'd be more than happy to help you with any questions that you may have.
Another quick question popped up. What would be a cutoff value for a good S-vol?
Something greater than 1.5. I would put that as a minimum. That means the current conversation is a 1.5 standard deviations higher than normal. That would be a threshold I would use. Anything less than that, you might have less than a full universe of people talking about. I'm going to date myself, but what I look at Twitter as, it's the feeling of the pit. When I started my career 100 years ago, you could feel, I was in the S&P pit, and you could feel the changes in the pit before it happened. So whether it's a noise or whether there's just more activity or maybe there's people moving around more, that's what we're trying to capture in the Twitter sphere. So if you don't have a higher volume to go along with the sentiment direction, you're not seeing the full effect. Okay. Any other questions, Joe?
No, that's it.
All right. So I'm just going to hit this one thing that we really couldn't show on the slide. So if you go to your accurate accounts long and accurate accounts short, you could specify your different time periods. So in this case, we're looking at Spectra Energy, and over the next month, of the most accurate accounts, 82% of them are currently bullish on Spectra Energy. Moody's Corporation, you know, and this is a good example. So I think one of the benefits of Twitter-derived metrics is it gives you new ideas. And so we're trying to help you trade better. And what you find is that social media brings securities to the forefront that maybe you weren't planning on trading that day. Maybe people are coming in and trading Tesla or Google or any other securities. But I doubt most people came in this morning or logged on to their machine this morning and said, you know what, I think I'll trade TJX companies, just as an example. So I think you're going to be able to use this data in your daily trading as one of the tools in your toolbox to help you generate new ideas with some directional predictive capabilities. Well, that's all that I have if we don't have any more questions.
One more question popped in. Is there a count of commenters?
So the count of commenters, that's probably another field that we should add. The count of the count of commentators would, right now, your best metric would be dispersion. Dispersion is what percentage of those tweets are coming from unique accounts. And I think that's a great idea, and we should add that to the development queue. But what this particular metric means is that 67% of the tweets are coming from unique accounts. So of those tweets, they're generally coming from unique accounts. So we don't have specifically a number of commentators. I'm going to put that on the dev queue, but the closest metric that we have is dispersion. And you can read that as a percentage of tweets that are coming from unique accounts. So a 1 would mean that every tweet comes from a unique account.
All right. If you want, I'll just pull up the Lightspeed Trader platform real quick and just show everyone where it's located in the platform.
Can you take control, or do I need to give it back to you?
Let's see. I think you might need to give it back.
All right. All right, you have the con, Joe.
All right. So it should pop up any second. Let me know when you can see the screen.
I can see it.
All right, great. So this is just a sample one-page layout for Lightspeed Trader. Those of you that use the platform on a regular basis, you're familiar with it. You can move all the windows around, customize it as you want. To pull up these features, you click on New, and these are all the different windows available. Scroll down to SMA, and that pops up a brand new window. So you can open up all of these here. Again, you got to click on New. You scroll down to the feature that you want, and then you can add them. And it's really that simple. There's not too much to it except just knowing to click on New, and that's it. And you can see all the windows that were discussed today in the webinar. I'm not sure why this one's not popping up right now, but that's really all I wanted to show. Just how easy it actually is to use. Everything's here, very customizable and simple to use. Does anyone else have questions? No, I guess that's it. Joe, do you have anything else you want to add at this point?
I just want to thank you guys, and again, reach out if you have any questions for us. And again, we're thrilled to be working with Lightspeed, and we're looking forward to hearing feedback and making changes as you guys request it.
All right, sounds good. We really appreciate you doing the webinar for us. It's great to have this type of functionality and tool on the platform. We're moving forward with new market information, and it's a great addition to our trading platform. That'll end our webinar tonight. I would like to thank everyone for joining us, and hope that you learned something new. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.